Hello everyone, it's me, the Colorful Booknester, and I have decided to kick off the Victorian Color-Along a little bit early. There is a Victorian Colorathon that's going to be happening September 20th, 21st, and 22nd of 2019. And the idea was to color anything Victorian, and it also opened up to like a steampunk inspired, and I kind of went for all of the above. Now, I will be doing a live coloring stream, but it's going to be on a different project that I'm working on. But I want to do this as a warm-up. Been wanting to color this page for a while. So this is Kolmes and Wot-san. So this is Herlock Kolmes. It's a female version, as you can tell. It's by Davidson Art off of Etsy. This is a printout. I've done it on, let me see. I've done it on a different kind of paper. It's the Strathmore Artigain. Yeah, okay, there we go. Drawing paper. And it is slightly colored. There's various colors in this pad that I have. And I went ahead and ordered that pad because it had a bunch of different colors in it, and I just wanted to see if it was something I wanted to do. The biggest thing about it for me, or the challenge, is that it is a 9 by 12 drawing pad. They didn't have 8.5 by 11, so I have to cut it down to be able to fit in my printer. But I really love this artwork, and I love the whole idea of it being a Herlock with Kolmes and Wot-san. And I like that it has kind of a steampunk feel to it. It is definitely Victorian. I've wanted to try some different techniques on here, but mainly what I wanted to do was also use my Faber-Castell. I have not used these a lot. I did buy myself a complete set. They're very different than my Prismas, and I have to get in a very different mindset whenever I use them. But I said, you know what, I'm going to get one full set and then I can buy replacements. And that's kind of the thing with all my supplies. I want to be able to buy replacements at this point. So anyway, so here's the Faber-Castells. That's what I'm going to be using. I also will be using Tombows and Stabilos. So again, we're using Polychromos. They're from Faber-Castell. Now, the biggest thing I'll say with my Faber-Castells that I have to remember with my Polychromos in this case is that these are not Prismas, and we have to go very light and do layers. Forcing these pencils do not seem to work so well for me. So we're going to start out with number 226, and it's alizarin crimson, I think is what the color is called, but it is number 226. So these are Polychromos Faber-Castell. So I'm not going to bother with the 9201. All Polychromos start out with 9201, and then they have their numbers. So this is 226, and we're just going to start in doing, you know, the multiple layers that I do all the time. I like starting with kind of the big swatch of color. So the cloaks are definitely, the cloaks or the jackets, whatever they, I mean, this is definitely a cloak, but the jackets and stuff are big pieces. I love doing clothing, and like I said, I've been looking forward to doing this one just because I like the type of clothing. I'm a huge steampunk fan. In fact, my therapy space, my office at the school I teach or that I work at is done in a steampunk style. So I really like that aesthetic. I like the ode to, you know, that Victorian style, and just absolutely have been wanting to do this picture for quite a while. You will always notice I always do circles. It's a habit, and it just makes it so I don't have any lines. There are some faint gray, well, this is grayscale, but there's some faint gray textures that they've given, and then the paper itself is going to add a texture to these different pieces of clothing, which is kind of fun. But it's a great grayscale. So Davidson Art is an Etsy store, and that's where I got this image from. Purchased it off of there. Love having PDFs when I can, though I do need to figure out what's going on with my printer, because I have a laser printer, and when it prints, you get these messy little bits sometimes, almost like as it's dragging through. So I don't know what I need to do for that at this point, if it is a question of the paper that I'm using. This paper does better than sometimes my copier paper. My copier paper sometimes makes a huge mess, and haven't figured out why that is. So yeah, we're just putting in our base kind of color all the way through. Now I mentioned that I use Tombows, and I will be on this particular piece as well. The Tombows I like to use more towards the end once I've been coloring on a piece versus at the beginning. And what I like is once I've built up my layers, which I have a lot of usually, and with your polychromos, you know, it's definitely how I color. You know, if I just push down my polychromos, what I find happens is I don't necessarily get a really deep color. What I do is I end up screwing up the tooth of the paper, so no more layers are going to happen, that's for sure. But if I do it, and it's funny because my Crayola colored pencils, I have to treat like high-end polychromos. It's very funny. They are very much the same. If I don't do layers after layer and do it very gently, instead of really pushing hard. Now, Prismacolors, you can start off if you're really confident with your color choices, which I never am, pushing really, really hard. And you get a very deep, intense color. What I find when I do that, when I do it with my Faber-Castells like these, my polychromos, is literally I get somewhat of a deeper color, but I then just absolutely do. I ruin the tooth, and there's nothing I really can do after that. I'm kind of stuck. So just going over some spots, largely the places that are shadowed already, the choice being that way I can just build up the color gradually before switching to the next one. Really only doing it where I know the deep, deep shadows are. All right. So the next color that I'm using is going to be for the purpose of really kind of accentuating the shadows. And so these deep, deep shadows, and that color that I'm going to be putting in is going to be your, oh, this is funny. This is a weird, interesting name. Caput Mortem Violet. Okay, but the number is 263, and I'm going to go put that in for the shadows. Now, something I'm not liking, I'm looking on how this is recording, and I really don't like the colors it's portraying because it is more of a red, whereas that looks a little brown. So give me one moment, and I'm going to go mess with the settings on this for a moment. All right, so there's more of the red that's more of the true color, which is ironic because now my hand looks like this weird orange color. But this is more the color that it's building up to be, is that red base. So let me put some shadows underneath here. The lighting is really strange today. We have an incredibly overcast day, which is nice because then I'm okay about being inside. It is mid-September and leaves are changing, light is changing. It's been cooler the last couple days and evenings, which has been really nice. But you can tell, you can feel that fall is well on its way, if not already here and just getting itself established. So again, just doing some shadows. coming in with my next color, which is going to be magenta, which is 133 in the Polychromos, and really just going to probably run this all over. Hopefully light though, but we're going to kind of see what I'm doing. What I might do is follow the shadows first, kind of expanding them out a little bit. I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to mess with lighting just one more time. If it doesn't really fix itself, we're just going to have to stick with it the way that it is. But give me one more moment. All right, I think that's about the best that I can do with what I have. So hopefully it's not too distracting. I would love to have a fantastic setup, but it's just not going to happen. So, but I just figured I can give you some of the colors, and then I always like a lot of times when I post on Instagram after I've done something and worked on something, people always ask me, you know, what colors and how I did it. And of course, that's why I think that the YouTube videos are so handy, because they allow for me to kind of show you my process, which I could never explain in even a bazillion words or less. It's much easier to show. All right, so let's just keep going along. So now I'm going to put in a little bit of just 199, which is Ever Faithful Black, just to deepen those shadows. Again, not really heavy. We're layering. But part of the layering process, which we might, you know, we're going to keep going and doing multiple layers on stuff, is it's building up either oil or wax, depending on what's going on with what kind of pencils you have. And what I find with my Tombows is that they become more blendable, because they're running over not paper anymore, but the wax or the oil buildup from the different pencils. It works particularly well with my Prismas, and I would assume if I can get a good layered effect with my Polychromos, that it should work pretty well. But this is the first time I've really done that with my Polychromos, or going to attempt to do it, I should say. So we will have to see how those goes. And I'm just putting in, like I said, a little bit deeper, darker shadows, and going to keep layering a couple times. I know some people don't like to use black. I have found that it is a great way. I really had to use it when I was using my Crayola pencils to get much, much deeper color. So I started using it both with my Polychromos in this case and also with my Prismas. And I like the added depth that it gives, but I really only use it to really put in. And I don't start off with black as the shadow, so there's a base color underneath all of my coloring that I do. That is usually the color that I'm hoping shines through, because that's one thing with black. If I use black, first, that would be the predominant color, whereas if you use a color underneath it, and then you can use it for your grays, and again, there's some, you know, great grayscale. This image is available not in grayscale, just in line art as well, and when you purchase it, you get both the grayscale and the line art. All right, and my next one's going to be 217, which is middle cadmium. And we're just going to really start adding more red in at this point, and I'm kind of using it to go over everything. I've got some strong shadows going in, but I want that more of that red color kind of coming out. And then I might do a couple more layers of what I've already done. So often I repeat the first level of layers. Um, So as I said, I'm probably just going to go through and do another repeat. I'd like to get another good, I mean, there's a lot of layers on here already, but again, these are polychromos, so we really need to build up with them. So I'm just going to kind of use them for some of the, going back over what we did before. And so what I'm coming back in, just repeating, is with 226 alizarin crimson. I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. Again, we've got our Kaput Violet for shading, 263. I really think I'm mispronouncing that one, but numbers are great. Number 263. Probably don't need a whole lot of black, but we're going to put it in there. Again, just kind of going over some of those really what I would consider deep, deep shadows. Then I'm going to go ahead and use my magenta, which is 133, and kind of go over everything again. Magenta kind of lifts it a little bit, gives it a little bit more of that maroon color. Um, the violet actually had a lot of brown in it too, and then we'll have a little bit of brown around it. And I think that all helps, like the vest is going to have a little bit of brown and it kind of tones it down so that it's not going to be as vivid of a red. I'm not trying to go for Christmas red and green. I'm kind of going more for kind of a burgundy and a more of a forest green with the colors. All right, so I now feel like we've built up lots of layers. We've got some shadowing already in there. And now what I like to do is come in with my Tombows like I was saying. And so with this buildup, I really like how it allows, if I wanted to kind of move color around. And actually, you know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to go ahead and come in with my Stabilos. So these are 68. So these are the ones that are a little bit, they've got a little bit more of a tip than the 88s are more of a fine liner. These still, you can do a lot of detail work with them. These are incredibly, for lack of a better word, and I apologize if people don't like the word, but they're very juicy. There's a lot of ink in these Stabilos, and I have bought the 88s now to see how well. I like that they all have the same colors, and they, you know, so you have the ultra fine, and then you have the slightly wider. This is number 68/19, so that's how I kind of recognize the numbers. Is I just use that number there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go right up next to the shawl here. These are really deep shadows with this darker color. And then, because of that buildup, they stay wet a little longer. I'm going to take this Tombow, and I'll tell you the number in just a moment when I can look at it, and feather it out a bit so that you get more of that gradient. And what's nice about the Tombows, they do pick up those colors a little bit. So just a little bit. Using that brush tip on there. You're being like, oh, that's awfully heavy. Well, Tombows dry a lot lighter than they go on, especially when they're going over um, the polychromos. In fact, if you look over here, we're already getting, it's fading in a little bit, but you'll see what we do in a moment. So again, I'm sorry, so that is number 847. They don't have names either, just numbers, which personally at this point, because I'm mutilating so many of these names, numbers are a good thing for me. So I'm going to go in, and like I said, I'm just using this little Stabilo to darken in these darker spots. That's the thing with coloring, is the contrast is what, and on clothes it's particularly important. So here I come back in with that Tombow just a little bit. ever so lightly. And I'm just using that tip, that brush tip, which is another thing I really love about the Tombows. And Tombows have a tendency to have a really juiciness about them as well. So, all right. And then I'm just going to go over to this other side. Now, I'm doing this kind of in stages because I want everything to be still kind of wet. And again, that wax or oil that I've built up, either with, in this case, it's polychromos, but with even my Prismas, this technique works really well with it. Oh, I just put the, oh, I just dropped the lid. Never good. Have to stop and get that in a moment. All right, and I'm going to flip this over in a minute to show you how much it's going through, because this is you know, basically it's a type of printer paper. It's not particularly heavy duty. It definitely is not watercolor. It's not marker proof, you know, that type of thing. If you try this, do it on a one that you don't care about what's on the back. So if you try this technique, try it first, because I am barely touching any of this. I'm kind of using that red to be my dark shadows down in here. So it's not touching. So now I'm going to go in with another Stabilo, and it's 68/48, and this has more of a true red. So I'm going to start pulling that down and out a little bit from the darker red. So that's now this is a Stabilo going back into the Tombow color, and these two colors are really similar. This 68/48 and the Tombow number 847 seem to be really close in color, at least in this picture, because it doesn't mean, because remember all the layers that I have underneath here. Now you may be going, why did you bother with the layers? I really do believe that all the shadowing underneath these pens and pencils, or from the pencils, is really important. So now I'm just going to join everything up with my Tombow. Everything's going to get over color of the Tombow. But I have changed that color, that Tombow, the perception of that color, by having all those different, those different shades. Now that is one thing I have noticed. It gets really shiny on this paper and on my camera. Now the thing that I like with Tombows is that little tiny brush. I can really get in between. All right, so we have her red cloak. It is a little bit brighter red showing up on there, but I think what we're going to see is it will tone down as it dries. Just going in and coloring. So I can feel that this paper is probably not something I want to be coloring on right now with pencils, because it will. But look there, there's no bleed through. So this is not a heavy cardstock, but is a heavier paper. Now I do, like I said, always test it. But you saw how many layers that we did. And this is what I like about Tombows, and Stabilos seem to have the same one, though I have seen my Stabilos bleed through eventually if I keep going with them. But Tombows are really, really difficult to get to bleed through, which I like in this case. I think it's very useful in this case. So now we're going to go on to, let's see, I really want that to dry. So we're going to go down to the pants, I think, next. So let me bring that over there. And the pants are very, very similar to the cloak. Hopefully, I've got that somewhere. All right. We're going to start out a little darker to begin with. So we're going to start out with that 263, the kaput in there. And I love graphic novels. I love the artwork of graphic novels. And when I see pictures like this, this is what I always feel they should look similar to. So I like the idea, get that over there a little bit, of it having a graphic novel look. So you have very, very dark colors, you have intense colors and shadows and things like that. So another reason why I really wanted to start coloring on this. All right, so the next color that we're going to be doing is 124, and that is Rose Carmine. And I'm really going to do this all over because I want that pinky red to come out even when I darken this up, and I will be darkening it up. And again, you might say, why is she doing all this to then cover it with markers? Because I haven't tried it with just straight markers. I do think that the blendability and the underlying colors do really change overall how the Tombows look. So maybe that's what I need to do, is try to do this with just markers and see what happens. Or not. I'm so not happy with the lighting situation. Okay. So now we're going to come in back in with that magenta just a little bit, start really darkening up the shadows on the side. Now we start in with our black. And of course, I'm going to start here in the shadows. But now the black has a tinge of the red coming through it, and it's not just a solid black. Then I'm going to use the burnt umber, and always starting, the most layers always are going to be my darkest spots, because I do like to go back into the colors that I've already done. So just to get that gradient so that it's not just, these straight lines or whatever. So we're going to go over them here. Okay. And then I want to bring that pink in again and really give it another layer. Now I'm switching the direction of my circles. So even though I do circles, doing them always like this direction. Oh, I'm really shaking the table. I'm sorry. Is one thing, but to try to fill in a little bit more color, I will also, especially when I'm getting to what I would consider my blending stages, I start changing the direction, still doing ovals or little tiny circles, whichever ones you want to call them. They're probably more like ovals, to get into some of the crevices of the various papers. And, and I color on all different kinds of quality of paper, so it's just a habit I've always done, regardless of if I'm on very expensive paper or perfect for coloring paper or good old kids coloring book paper. Okay, so there's the pants, and now we're going to do what we did before, which is kind of start bringing in some of the Stabilos. So I'm going to start with my darkest, which is 6819. I also like it because it does cover up the black lines and makes them the color of the surrounding, in this case it's material on the pants, so I'm happy about that. Again, you get that blending effect because I do think you get a little more time now with all those layers of pencil down. I'm going to go ahead and go in with the other Stabilo, which is 68 / what? 48. Start, and I go back up in that darker and just kind of bring it out. And it helps get more of a gradient, less of a harsh line of delineation between the darker color and this lighter color. Also re-wets the other one a little bit. so that maybe it'll move just a hair. My red a little bit. Now, this is where hopefully the magic might work by bringing these together. And you see I'm going over the light, but even once I do it, the light is still a little bit lighter. So you get that highlight in there, even though I went over it with the Tombow marker. There is just a hair of a highlight, and that's all that I want, because I want these pants to be pretty dark anyway. But you still get that little bit of a highlight, a little bit of red and shadow. It's funny that now it matches the outfit. I kind of want it darker than that. So you know what? I'm going to let that dry. And then what I might do is end up going over it again. But I want it to completely dry, because if I went in right now and started layering any type of pencils on it, I'm scared that it would end up tearing. And I don't want it to do that. So while that one's drying, we will go up and start messing with the bowler hat a little bit. Because again, I'm kind of jumping as far away so that I don't drag my hand through anything that might still be a little bit wet. So let me get set for that. Oh, well, I'll let you see. We're going to go up here to the bowler hat. So something to take in account for is going to be the lighting in this picture. And this picture is a nighttime picture. We can see a moon back here. At least that's what I'm calling it, because I want these lamps to have a glow from them. So, and we're going to have kind of a gray, foggy, misty look, hopefully, when we get finished. At least that's the idea. And so we have to think about where we might see some light. And one of the things I like to do is go ahead and put in that light on my picture in as many spots as I think it would be appropriate, so that A, I don't forget about it, and B, it starts making me plan. So one of the things is, again, so here's the street lamp that we're going to have, and so the glow anywhere is going to be here, probably to the back. Not a whole lot at the front of her face. She should probably be in pretty kind of heavy shadow. It's not glowing on Big Ben. Big Ben is in the, the far background, but it's glowing all around here. And I kind of think of a circle kind of thing, because if you think about it. And so what I'm going to do is just start laying in some yellow, which you may or may not be able to see, but you will as I progress with the colors. And, it's not going to be in this gray, or this is the sky, so it's just the reflection is on her, on Herlock. I might want to do a couple up here, maybe very light. And you're like, why are you even bothering with this? Well, it is, I like being able to start getting it in before I really start doing much else. So this whole side of her face should, in my mind, should have somewhat of a glow. Her ear, definitely here on the coat, you would see maybe a little bit of a highlight up there, not down in here because it's not getting in there, but we're going to let her chin kind of have a little bit. Her hand here and down here. Again, you may or may not be able to really see it, but we'll have a little bit of a glow. Her shoulder up here, and we'll have to do something with those dark lines when we get to that point, but her shoulder would have a glow, I would think. So let's see, I'm feeling pretty good about Herlock. Let's see. And then there should be a faint one on her hat, and I'm thinking back in this area. So I don't want to do it too heavy, and maybe a little bit there. I mean, it's not that bright necessarily, but if it's a dark night, they're going to have light on them. It depends on how dark it is all the way around. So we're going to do just a bit of a glow on the back, and then in her hair, I would think the higher pieces might have, going towards her face, a little bit of a hint of a glow. So I think you can see the highlights that I've put in. They might seem a little stark right now because there's nothing else going on. I don't really feel like there'd be too much on her, on even her collar, but maybe just a hair of one. Just help me remember to keep that collar light back in the back. And that's really about it. So those are kind of like thinking about the lamps, and even around the lamps, I want to start going ahead and putting a glow around them, kind of coming out. And since I've got the yellow in my hand, why not do it? And by the way, this yellow is the light cadmium yellow. It's a very, very bright yellow. There's a few, I would even start putting some on the lamps. You're going to have some different yellow shadows. You know, it's really just kind of thinking about how you see it. And of course, in the middle of the lamp, so we'll have that coming out. There we go. All right, so we've got a little bit of the lights going. All right, back to our bowler hat. So because we put in the highlights, it's going to help me, but I have to be aware of them. And so what I really want to do is try to figure out, you know, what would those highlights look like? And the problem is that I've put yellow down, so we might start seeing an orange exchange here because I'm putting a pink, and this is pink, what is it? Pink Matter Lake 129. So I don't want a whole lot of orange in here, but I need to be kind of aware that that's going to be a light, and it might look a little orange in that yellow light. Remember, those street lamps are going to be really yellow. They don't have LEDs like we do now that are so bright. All right, so we're just going to do that, and then I'm going to go ahead and color the whole band that lighter color for right now. And the light edging, which will probably get darkened up as we go. So the one thing, if you get a chance, go out and watch some people who do pencil work, period, for like, you know, like Dee Dee Willingham, you know, for her artwork. She does, you know, she uses Prismas. There's people out to watch where you can see them kind of layer, and you realize that a lot of times the colors that they first put down, you don't even, you don't perceive are there anymore. You kind of like, oh, why did they even bother doing that? You know, this is almost all black. But yet there still is a continuity. There's a movement into that darker color. And then there's the underlying of that darker color that really works. And you do start believing that you see. And I think that's really important. So that's why I do the layers I do. I look at pictures really close and try to find out what all colors do I think I see, and then go from there. And then of course the lighter is always easier than the darker. I'm also going to start in on your scarf, because this scarf is going to be it's a different texture already. We know it's a different material. I want it to be a little bit lighter than the rest of the outfit. So I'm going to put in a lot of this pink to begin with as the base color. And where I know it's going to go really dark, I'm probably not going to bother putting pink there, because that's going to be almost black where you're not going to be able to perceive it much. I'm hoping the texture of the scarf is something that we can see at the end, but not all the way into that little tiny crevice there. Here it is. It's 217. This is going to be your middle cardium red. And this will start bringing in the shadows a little bit. So I'm going to be bringing it from that side over, because this is a darker shadowed area. I'm still on the fence about grayscale for me. Sometimes I think I do pretty well on it, and other times I don't. I guess because I'm a little bit of a control freak in how heavy I do my colors anyway. And so, you know, the grayscale always makes your colors look darker and heavier. And you're also confined to that. Now the grayscale on this, I like a lot. I think it's a good one. And I seem to be doing okay with it. So, but I'm still out and I'm getting used to grayscale. I think, again, you know, these are all, it's a process in our coloring. Like for me to even be using polychromos versus Prisma Premieres is unusual for me. And I'm having to learn how to work with them every time because I just don't pick them up enough. They're not my go-to. My Prismas are. Usually when I see a new technique, the first thing I think of is go grab my Prismas. But it's like I have to relearn every time with every different set of pencils. It's probably why professional artists always find their favorite and they stick with it. And that's why there's so many different professional artist grades. I think it's all about when you catch them, you know. That's when they finally get what they're doing and they understand the process of creating art the way they want to. If that happens to be the pencil that they've learned that technique on, they're probably going to hold on to it. All right, so I'm going to come in with my magenta next and just keep adding and building. So magenta is number 133. And then I'll come in with that Caput Mortum Violet 265. So as you can tell, I'm using a lot of the same colors throughout. It's going to be a question of order and placement of those colors. Like I said, I really think I want to come down here and get those a little bit darker. The cloak is, but I might wait and do that almost last. Now we're going to come in with that middle cadmium red. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Let's go in with our black shadows with that black 199 black, and let's start getting those in before we kind of use that red as the all over. So again, this should be pretty dark over here because there's no light on it, except for maybe the ambient light of the moon. It's not a direct shadow. Lightening up as I go into it. I'm not pressing very hard at this point. I want that shadow to kind of fade. We need to darken up the shadows in here because that really is not going to have a whole lot of light. I'm leaving this one little bit. And you see me adding some black down here. This is dried now, and so I'm feeling more confident I can go in. And in fact, I think I'm going to go ahead, since I have the black in my hand, and really go over these pants in a couple areas. So I'd really like to darken them down. But because it's dried now, I don't feel like I'm going to tear up the tooth. And it still has tooth, which is nice. And that's the use of the markers. They don't ruin the tooth unless I went over it with pencil immediately, then I just rip it to shreds. But I do this all the time. And you think you're done with a section, and then you go back and you're like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and go over this a little bit more and that a little bit more. So I'm going to just take this really lightly and start trying to feather it out a little bit with the where that highlight is, so it's not such a drastic line. But where you can tell it's a little bit of a highlight still. let's see. So back up to the bowler. Now I feel a little bit more confident about going in with my middle cadmium red and start bringing that all out. And we're going to do the same up down here, but now I'm going to come up with the red the whole way. I've left it kind of blank because I want that highlight to be in there. And now I'm going to take my Pink Matter Lake 129 and really hit this kind of hard because I kind of like it to be almost like it's like a satin ribbon. Not pink, but of a similar color to everything else, and I want to start blending that together. The edge might be a little bit pinker. And now I'm going to go in with that 124, that's the Rose Carmine. Middle cadmium red 217. I'm going to use number Tombow 743. Use that a little bit in there for some shadows and different colors, and then even this to bring it out a little bit. And then I have this other one, 020, and I just kind of use it to blend some colors together. Alright, so as you can tell, I mean, we started out with this yellow, this bright of a yellow. It's dimmed down to that. You've seen how these colors keep going over and over, and that, you know, that you might not even be able to see some of the differences, and you're like, why did you even bother? But I really feel like it adds to the depth of the color. And I don't know any other way to do it. Let's just be honest, right? I don't know any other way to do it. So I'm really trying to get an angle of how the color base I want for that. And it's proving to be challenging because I kind of see it almost as having more of a pinky maroon color and lighter. But I don't know how I'm going to do that. And it not fade into everything. So I'm just using my Rose Carmine 124. And then coming back in with my 263, that's the kaput. I really don't feel confident about how I'm saying that. I use the Rose Carmine. Again, layering. Trying to keep it on the pinkish, maybe gray side. I don't know. I don't really know. Alright, we're going to come up with that carmine and try to put some shadows in with it and see what it does. Because again, I don't want it to match the cloak, and how I want it to stand out a little different from that. There we go, kind of like that. I don't want it to get too much darker. I do need to do, and I have to be careful here because I don't want to overdo it, is really get some of those shadows again, just a little bit. Because it's amazing in the coloring. What I've learned is, you know, and when I'm trying to make it look like I almost used markers to do the whole thing, or kind of that graphic novel feel, the lights and darks, the differences, the high-low colors or intensities, and really your low lights versus your highlights, they really are what makes the difference. All right, so now I'm going to be really kind of, actually I'm going to use my Tombow 743, and we're just going to go in and do a few of these folds of the shadows just to bring them out a little bit. And again, sometimes when you do it, it looks a lot darker than when it dries. There we go. I think we're going to leave it at that. I say that and then I'll probably tweak it. All right, so we have all the red of her cloak and her pants. I'm feeling pretty good about her pants. In fact, I might go ahead and go in, yeah, why not, and do this kind of pink over it. There we go. I like how much darker they are, so I'm happy about that. I like that they still have somewhat of a little highlight right down here. And now we're going to work on her vest next. And the vest is going to be kind of a brownish orange color, and it kind of helps break up this whole outfit. At least I think it does. So here we are again, and we will be working with 4 of my Prismacolors, and the first one is going to be number 280, and that is your burnt umber. And then we're going to have your green gold, which is number 268. And then we have our Indian red, which is 192. And then the last one of the Faber-Castell Polychromos that I'm going to be using is number 187, and that's burnt ochre. So let's get started. We're going to start first with the heaviest shadows, and this is for her vest. Coming in through here. Again, very lightly putting them on, just because that's kind of how I find that polychromos work best. I find myself doing these colors. It's September. I think I'm really hungry for some fall colors. Makes me wonder if I did this at a different time of year, would I have chosen different colors? Okay, we're going to go in with the green gold. And again, if you notice, I'm going to go ahead and sharpen this. That I always go back into the first color, and that really, it helps with those lines so that you don't have those delineations, but it also carries all these colors through it. And remember, that's the shadow. So a shadow doesn't just cast brown and turn everything brown in its wake. It's just going to darken the color of in this case, it's a vest underneath. But you should still have those colors coming out from underneath it. And I think that's something that we don't always think about, and sometimes we want to just like right here, just do it right up against one another, when you really should be coming all the way back. I say should be. There's no should be. This is, this is just how I color, and you color any way you want. Don't, I guess whenever I do these videos, I just know people ask me how I do some things, and as I've said before, there's no way I could write them out. I couldn't just respond in a Instagram and write out what I did and make me feel like I've actually explained myself. So that's why I do the videos, and also to contribute back, because I've watched so many to get inspiration. So that's the other reason. So we've got our first little bit of yellow in there, or green gold, I should say. And next we're going to go in with the Indian red. And the Indian red, I'm just introducing a little bit more in those shadow areas and going to bring it out just a tad. trying to make this more of a brown color is what I'm trying for, but I want a hint of red because that mirrors it and makes it work even better with the red cloak. So, and if you think about it, I'm mirroring down here the colors that we see even up here in the hat a little bit. Let me bring it down so you can see a little bit better because that has a glare. But those colors are getting mimicked down here. And again, it kind of carries. And I like to have colors kind of in different places. So another place where this color combination might be used is going to be up here in the violin. And, you know, this is kind of Wot-san's side. So maybe I do whatever I decide here. If I decide on the green, maybe I'll introduce a little green up here or something. I don't know. But right now, this is going to get kind of mirrored in here. And then this is going to be gold all the way around the edges. And this also mimics those colors in the gold. So, you know, it's funny. You may not feel when I get done with this that I've done a limited palette, but in a way, I have, and that's one way I can kind of be in control of a picture is by not having too many different colors. Now, granted, this vest is going to take me 4 colors alone to do. So, I mean, there's a lot of colored pencils I use, but they're in similar families. And then, of course, there's the direct contrast, which when I was looking up the palette that I wanted to use, and I got this idea of this kind of dark forest leaf green, and then I was for her jacket, for Herlock's jacket, that's whenever I got inspired for the other colors in there. So I really suggest that too. If you can go out on Pinterest and just put in color palette, and you can put in like you can go on Google and put green color palette and you'd be amazed. So like if you had already in your head, let's say you already had in your head that you wanted this cranberry red, you might put that in and then get a completely different type of color palette, but it starts giving you ideas of what colors, and you know, go with the one that you're drawn to because you're going to be working on this for a little while and you got to enjoy the colors. All right, and then our last one here is the burnt ochre, and again starting from up in here, which is a good habit to do anyways if you're thinking of using the Tombows the way I do, because now I've really made sure that there's plenty of coverage up here. And where am I going to use my Tombows most likely? Up in this area, definitely. So it will, again, it makes them be able to be moved around a little bit more. I have more time with them before they get absorbed by the paper. And I can tell right now, I'm probably going to go back in a little bit with some of my colors because I want that real strong variant. So here we go. We're going to go, we're just repeating now. Back with the burnt umber. Trying to make these shadows a little bit stronger. And again, like I said with before, polychromos are ones that the only way I can get them to work for me is really to do light layers and be patient that it's going to take these light layers. I can't get this intense color on the first round, but at the same time they blend really beautifully, so I'm really happy with that. And now I've got my green gold just to kind of move back up in there a little bit, come down. I really like the colors that those make together. Actually, I missed a bit down here because I really want that shadow. It really needs to be, I mean, all of this is heavily shaded because it's going to be nighttime, but we still want to be able to see it. I also chose these colors because for some reason that is the colors I think of with Victorians, you know, really strong rusts and browns, and especially in something that kind of looks menswear, but I also wanted the vibrancy. So now I feel like I have a lot of really heavy layers, which is good. And then I'm going to bring in my Tombow and let's see, is this the right, and my Stabilo. So again, what I'm going to probably do is do my Stabilo. So this is a Stabilo 6875. I'm going to go up here, and again, you know, there's a lot of black lines, so we can kind of brown them out with our Stabilos. Kind of establishing that, and then I'm going to take my brown, just a hair of it, start bringing it out a little bit. Now I'm not going to do a lot with this because I don't want it that dark. What starts happening is then I'm going to bring in my 020 and start bringing that down. Now it carries the ink with it, so I always start where it's dark and kind of pull down and let that dry, kind of wear off. So it really does pull that color down. And I'm going to go down into the vest here. And then the vest, or not the vest, I'm sorry, the color ends up kind of dissipating. And it goes back to more of its creamy orange color. That is the color of the. And here we go. We're going to go down here and do the same thing. I think I'm going to put a little bit of the Stabilo along here, maybe over here, and then I'm going to try to grab it with this Tombow. Oh, there we go. So I was able to put a little bit of shadow down in there. Now again, I need to make sure and let this dry a bit. I'm going to come down here just a bit. There we go. Okay. And what I'm thinking is these buttons here, I'm not going to make them shiny. I'm going to make them more a little bit darker. So I've just dotted on them a bit just to darken them up, and then going to go back in and use my Tombow to move it about a bit. They're really tiny, so to make them really shiny would be a huge, huge challenge. I don't think I'm ready for that. So giving this a bit of a wet try. Now I have all three of my markers open, because this is really, so yeah, seriously, I've got all three, and you know, holding in my hand and all that. Seem to get that to blend as nicely as I would like. So what I might have to do again is let this dry. See, now it's starting to peel, so I got to stop because I'm starting to ruin the paper, and I will come back. Okay, now I have to put all the right colored lids back on. Come back once it's dry and do probably a little bit more with my pencils. All right, so there we go. Now we've got at least that part of her done. I am going to go ahead and start focusing on the green of Herlock's coat and go through those colors because I think that might be of interest, and we'll get her outfit finished. And we're going to start with number 170, May Green. Stay put. Then we're going to use green chromium green. Yeah, this one gets pretty ridiculous. That's number 174. Then we go to 173, which is your olive green yellowish. Love that. Then we have 268, which we've seen before, which is our green gold. And then we have our walnut, which is 177. I think we've used that a couple times. Here's a new one, 267 pine green. And then we have some Stabilos and others, which I'll introduce in just a moment, but I did want to go ahead and get these started. Okay, so I basically use this to go over almost everything. This first one. So this is our May Green. So if you think about this, this is our base color. Just going to put a base coat over everything. And one of the things that I have kind of a habit of doing is always going in with almost, if not my darkest color, one of my darkest colors, um, after I've done my lightest. And again, that's, for me, it's just easier to start putting in the shadows now. So that's what we're going to do. Now we're using the chromium green opaque, and it's number 174. And I'm just going to go in and do a few of these shadowed areas and start building up that color a little bit with this darker. And it just helps me mark out where I want my shadows, and it starts letting me see if that's what I want, how far I might want to bring them out. Again, this is grayscale, so the grayscale has lots and lots of clues for me to kind of know where those shadows would be. So it is a way to practice, to start training your eye where you would think there would be darker shadows, and you know, the folds of the blouse, or in this case the coat, is given to you so that you can see the movement, and that would be a good place to put all of your dark shading. So that's what I'm going to do now. I also have a tendency to put it around the edges a little bit. If I want to highlight, or if I feel like there is a highlight, so if we look over here, you can see how this right there still has the yellow. I'm not really going to touch that much for a while, because I'm going to want that yellow to be the true color. And I know I have lots and lots of more layers to go. But right here we've got a great shadow. But right in here, this would be lighter. See how that would probably be something that I would use a white Posca pen to lighten up, and then and highlight. But all this in here should be fairly dark because it's not getting as much light onto it. And as we get deeper, it's gonna deeper down closer, you can see that there wouldn't be light shining on that. So keep working on that all the way around with all the different shadows. So now I'm going to go in with my, oh, wrong one, I grabbed the wrong one anyways, let's see, olive green yellowish, and going to start putting more layers coming out of most of the shadow areas all around, kind of bringing it in. So kind of like starting and again going into that dark and then coming out, and just start that build up. And I will leave some areas not covered for right now because I like that lighter color coming through. But we're going to start bringing out the shadows and start deepening up the colors overall. Get those various shades of green in there. Start building up that color just like I said. So do that all the way around, and then we'll go to our next color. This jacket, as you can tell by how many colors I just rambled off before we got started, has a lot of variance colors in it. I like this yellowish green. It'll pay off. I'm going into that yellow that we did for the highlight just a hair at that point, but we still have that highlight of yellow from the street lamp. So now we're going to go on and start deepening those shadows so that we can continue with the building of the colors. And so the next color I'm going to be bringing in is the walnut, and that is number 177. So we're going to go around and do all these shadows specific, really start deepening them with this brown, and then we'll be following it up with kind of a more pungent green. And then I'm probably going to do another sweep over everything and just start building. So we'll just start walking through them and just adding. So you're about to get through all the main colors that I used. All right, so now I'm going to bring in my pine green, which is 267, and we're going to really start adding it in and bringing out that green color, going from that kind of spring foresty green to more of a deeper color. And also enhance those shadows even more. So now comes the just basically repeating everything that I've done with a little bit of trying to blend and start getting these colors to go together. And so I'm just going to go right through and do all of them over. You know, the darks are going to go in the shadows, but I'm going to use the light to bring out some of those and then try to make it kind of even, and then we'll be ready for some of the final touches for the green cloak. So now we're going to be adding in the markers, and so I've got my two markers. One of them is going to be the 6833 of the Stabilo, and then the other one is 6875. So we've got the brown and the green, and what I'll do is go ahead and put some of the brown in the very dark shaded spots. And what I like about this is it starts covering up those black lines, which is nice. It starts making things look a different color. And what I also like is when you kind of do this, and again, because we've had that build up from the pencils, we get a little bit more movement as far as being able to blendability between these two markers. And it does go on really dark, but then once it dries, it's not quite as dark, and then of course we're going to blend it all out. So got to be very careful, don't want to go through the paper. But this also helps because my I have a laser printer, but the black lines on almost all my paper when I print out they kind of move around, or they disappear. It's like they get rubbed off with my pencils, which isn't bad because then it looks, you don't notice the black lines. And on this, I've noticed with grayscale particularly, it moves around, but this fills in those spots. So along here I can see, let me see if I can get a little closer. Nope, I think about as close as I can get. So I take that, and there's the black line, but now I'm going to put my brown on it, and then take that green, and that kind of turns it into, it's now a green line and not a black, and it fills in where that black laser printer kind of is flaking off, I guess, is more the thing. So I actually, again, this process with the markers was almost because of this little weird phenomenon that my printer does whenever I go to print out my PDFs, and I really like PDFs a lot. It's a lot easier to store all your coloring books and stuff if they were all on PDFs. That's why I started buying Jade Summer books, because they were on PDF, is how you could buy them, and then they stopped doing that. So now I haven't bought a Jade Summer in a long time, because I just, I'm not going to buy one every month when they come out with a new one and then have to store that. Right now, I do have a monthly subscription with Color Haven, but I don't do Jade Summer anymore, just because they aren't on PDF, and I really liked them when they were like that. So I go out on Etsy, and I'm always looking for new artists. If you have anybody you want to suggest, feel free to put it down in the comments, because I do like the PDFs when I can. But my printer does these weird things. But that's okay. We find ways around it, don't we? So yeah, I'm just going to keep going in here with these two markers, really put in some of those shadows and try to bring them out a bit. It's taken me a while to get used to these, and I really used my Staedtler fine liners a lot more than I did the Stabilos, but once I started doing this, well, actually working on a different project, I started seeing the value of Stabilos and how I could use them, and really, really liking them. So I'm now getting so much more used to them, and I did go and buy the Stabilo fine liners, because the fine liners are what I'm more comfortable with, but I'm now becoming very comfortable with these 68s, and they do provide a very fine line. You just have to be kind of light with them as far as just get on that very tip, and you can get a pretty thin line. So if you're only going to buy one set, I would probably say go ahead and just get the 68s, because they do a great job. But I did go ahead and get both. And I've had these 68s for well over a year and a half now, 2 years probably, and I haven't had any of them dry out yet. So they seem to store well. I mean, I've used them, but not Not as much as, I mean, I wouldn't expect with the use that I've done of them that they would have dried out. But I would have thought the storage of them maybe would have been a reason that they dried out. So I think we've got some really nice shadows going, which is good. I've still got a few more places that I need to do it, but feeling pretty good that we're almost to the point where I would just do one all over. Use of some of my Tombows, but I do want this to go ahead and dry in between, because my Tombows, the process I do with this, I actually use 3 different Tombows, and so I want this good and dry before I start wetting it again with my all right. So looking at that, I think I've got all of the shadows that I want to get. It's looking very avocado-like, at least in the up on the computer when I'm looking at it. So I'm going to take a break and let this dry, and then we'll come back. All right. All right. So we are now to that magic time. Well, kind of. And what I'm going to be using is my Tombows 158, 173, and 133. And we're going to try to do this fairly quickly so that it doesn't mess with the paper much. The paper seems to be doing okay. But we're going to take the darker one, which is your 173, and go down where we did the dark colors and kind of just quickly go over it. And then I'm going to extend it out with my lighter green here. Ugh. And we're just going to do that in various places and kind of extend it out. All right. Just some of the small little places. This is just, again, I'm trying to deepen those colors just like we did on the red. I'm just flipping back and forth, but that's kind of what I do throughout because it's still a little wet. And I can use that to my advantage. Be careful because this over here did get quite saturated, so I really don't want to tear up the paper. The paper's holding up pretty well. Again, it's that Strathmore paper, but it's not particularly thick. I think this would work, and maybe I'll do it on another picture somewhere to see if it does it on my regular copy paper, which not just plain copy paper like, but I have a cardstock, a Nina White that I use, buy it from Walmart, and see if this same process will work on it as well. I think it will, but that would be kind of an interesting thing to check on. So this is another area that I know is very heavy because I'm really trying to get that shadow from the belt to make it kind of have that 3-dimensional and pop out. So there's been a lot done here to get those colors going and get it dark enough that you. Now again, I love these Tombows because of that really thin line. You can always use these as fine liners as well. strong shadows. Only the shadow knows. No, I'm not that old. I didn't actually hear that radio play. I just know about it. Not too bad. Now, I'm going to put these away and let it dry again, because the next one is going to go all over it. Now, this one is number 133, and I'm going to put it over the entire green. So the idea being, once I put this on here, you're still going to see those shadows. I might have to go back and update a few of them, but they should still work, and you should be able to see those shadows. It's just going to be a deeper, richer green color for the jackets. So I'm kind of touching it to make sure. Yeah, it's pretty dry. So we're just going to start and again go from the dark to the light. And I love this color and what it does. And we're going to work kind of quickly because again and one thing I've noticed with the Tombow is when I do use them this way, I also don't get lines, like streaky lines, and then which is good. Whereas that's why I don't really use Sharpies and stuff. I can't. Well, actually, I will be using Sharpies on this because that's what I'm going to use to blacken the edges. All right. Now see how that, now if you look there, that's so solid, and then with that red, it looks like it's a solid piece. It has that almost like a Copic feel, or how they would do. Whereas this side still you see a lot of white, and then this also faded in some of those shadows. So this has that older feel of like a maybe 40s, 50s type coloring with shadows like you would see on the front of a book, or the old Nancy Drew books even, the original ones. So this is why I really like this style. And this particular type of drawing really screams for it, I think. So go across, and there you go. And I just don't feel that this would have the same color look if I just did it straight on and didn't do all of the pencil base. I think the pencil base really adds a depth to it. There we go with the green. Back out just a little bit and see what my camera does. Now there's a little bit of a glare there. Let's go in. So that's the two together, and that's the two coats. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and call it a day. But I will definitely, before I put this video up, have it completed so that you can see what the finished picture looks like. So I hope you found it enjoyable. I love the extreme dark colors, and I hope that you're enjoying our little sneak peek into our Victorian Colorathon that again is going to be happening this coming weekend, the 20th, 21st, and 22nd of September 2019. And I will be going on there with something kind of similar to this, but a little bit different. So it's a project I've been working on for a couple of years now. So I was going to show that. But for now, this is where I'm going to leave you. Thank you for watching. And as I always say, keep coloring those pages.